May 29, 1943, 11:47 in the morning. RAF Alconbury. Captain James Hartwell settled into the pilot seat of his B-17, eyes fixed on the ground personnel as they fed the final ammunition belt into gun position number 17, a modification no standard flying fortress had ever carried. At 26, he'd survived 42 combat sorties. But what waited on the runway ahead? That was completely unfamiliar territory. The YB-40 outweighed every fortress he'd ever commanded by 4,000 pounds. Between February and May of that year, the 8th Air Force had watched 173 B-17s go down across European skies. Long-range fighter protection didn't exist yet. German interceptors hunted American bomber formations with ruthless efficiency, especially during the vulnerable journey home from deep Reich targets. Focke-Wulf 190s struck from high noon positions where nose weaponry couldn't pivot fast enough to respond. Messerschmitt 109s tore through formations in screaming dives, picking off any aircraft that lost formation speed. Air crews had a name for it: running the gauntlet. Reaching 25 missions? Those were coin-flip odds. The answer appeared straightforward. When escort fighters couldn't protect bombers all the way into Germany and back out again, why not transform a bomber into its own fighter? Army Air Force's engineers gutted a B-17F of everything that didn't contribute to firepower. The bomb load? Removed entirely. The bombardier's station? Converted into a dual-point 50 caliber chin turret. They installed a second dorsal turret aft of the radio compartment. Single waist-mounted guns became twin installations, additional weapons integrated into the forward fuselage. Ammunition storage tripled, 11,275 rounds total. Supplemental armor plate welded around crew stations. 16.50 caliber machine guns concentrated on a single airframe. They christened it the YB-40, the Flying Destroyer. Douglas Aircraft's Tulsa facility completed 12 conversions by March's end. Alconbury's 92nd Bombardment Group took delivery in early May. Colonel William Reed handpicked 7 crews for the inaugural combat evaluation. Hartwell drew aircraft 42-5738. His crew nicknamed it Hedgehog. The excess mass threw everything off. A standard B-17F reached 20,000 feet in 25 minutes. The YB-40 required 48. The control column responded differently, sluggish, resistant. The aircraft commander who'd tested it at Wright Field had warned Hartwell, with all that ammunition stacked behind the bomb bay, the center of gravity sat in completely the wrong place. But those guns... Hartwell had never witnessed this level of offensive capability mounted on a bomber. The chin turret alone could tear a Focke-Wulf apart before it closed within striking distance. Every approach vector had coverage. Every attack angle met with interlocking fire zones. The mission parameters were uncomplicated. Escort the primary formation to Saint-Nazaire. Strike the submarine facilities. 7 YB-40s would position themselves in the formation's most exposed areas. Low squadron, trailing elements, everywhere German fighters preferred to hunt. Hartwell fired up the engines at 1:25 that afternoon. All 4 Wright Cyclones hummed smoothly. The control tower granted takeoff clearance at 1:50. Hedgehog accelerated down the runway with 168 additional B-17s queuing behind. Target arrival 4 p.m. If you're curious how Hartwell's flying destroyer fared against the Luftwaffe, please tap that like button. Each like amplifies our reach, helping these buried innovations find new audiences. And subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Now back to Hartwell's story. The formation made landfall at the French coast by 3:30. Anti-aircraft fire peppered the sky above Guernsey. Radio transmissions confirmed German fighters launching from airstrips near Rennes. Hartwell's flight engineer flagged concerning fuel numbers, consumption rates running hotter than briefing projections. The YB-40 guzzled more fuel getting to altitude. Saint-Nazaire materialized through scattered cloud cover at 4:02. The main formation released their payloads and banked homeward. Unburdened B-17Fs climbed with renewed energy, accelerating noticeably. Hartwell advanced his throttles. Hedgehog began losing ground. The standard fortresses pulled away at 160 miles per hour. Hartwell had the throttles maxed at continuous power settings. Hedgehog managed 148. His flight engineer descended from the top turret. Technical Sergeant Paul Morrison, 31 years old, 200 hours maintaining B-17s before the YB-40 modifications arrived. He scanned the engine gauges, and his expression darkened. Cylinder head temperature on number 3 engine climbing into dangerous territory. The additional weight and drag forced the Cyclones to work beyond their design specifications. Morrison eased back number 3's throttle before it cooked itself. Hedgehog decelerated to 142. The main formation stretched 3 miles ahead now, then 4. Hartwell could observe the other 6 YB-40s laboring at the rear of their designated groups, every single one hemorrhaging position. The radio operator's voice crackled from the waist section. Staff Sergeant Frank Delaney had identified contrails at 4 o'clock high, German fighters ascending to intercept. Focke-Wulf 190S from Jagdgeschwader 2 stationed at Van. 6 aircraft, possibly 8. They were stalking stragglers. Hartwell keyed the intercom. All gunners acquire targets. The chin turret gunner confirmed excellent visibility. The ball turret rotated without resistance. Both waist gunners verified their twin mounts were hot and tracking. The initial Focke-Wulf dove at 5 o'clock, distance 1,200 yards. The tail gunner opened up at 800. Tracer fire streaked toward the plummeting fighter. The German pilot banked hard left and climbed away without engaging. The second assault originated from 11 o'clock high. 2 Focke-Wulfs in pursuit formation. The chin turret gunner tracked the lead aircraft and unleashed a 4-second burst. 50 caliber rounds stitched across the FW-190's engine cowling. Black smoke erupted from the fighter. It inverted and spiraled toward the channel. Delaney confirmed the kill from his waist position. The second Wolf abandoned his attack run. For 6 minutes, the YB-40's firepower performed precisely as engineered. 3 additional German fighters approached. 3 more attacks terminated prematurely. The overlapping fire zones from 16 guns constructed a barrier of lead no pilot dared penetrate, but Hedgehog continued decelerating. The main formation stretched 6 miles ahead, then 7. Hartwell could barely distinguish the bomber stream against the afternoon horizon. Morrison reported fuel status. They'd consumed 800 gallons beyond briefing estimates during climb and engagement. At current power settings, they had 90 minutes to reach Alconbury. The formation would touch down in 70. Another pair of Focke-Wulfs materialized at 2 o'clock. These pilots maintained their attack profiles. They'd deciphered the YB-40's vulnerability. It couldn't maintain formation speed, couldn't escape. The German fighters orbited at a safe distance, waiting for the bomber to fall farther behind, waiting for the optimal moment to strike from coordinated vectors simultaneously. Hartwell pushed the throttles forward again. Number 3, engine temperature climbed back into the red zone. Morrison watched the gauge in silence. The escort bomber, armed with 16 guns, had transformed into the very target it was designed to protect. The assault materialized at 4:43. 3 Focke-Wulfs from divergent vectors. High right, low left, dead ahead at 12 o'clock level. Hartwell couldn't evade. The YB-40 maneuvered like a freight locomotive with all that mass. He maintained heading and altitude. His gunners engaged simultaneously. The chin turret tracked the frontal assault. The top turret swung right. The ball turret rotated left. Both waist gunners fired through opposing windows. Spent shell casings cascaded through the fuselage. The aircraft vibrated from the combined recoil of 8 guns firing in unison. The lead Focke-Wulf's canopy disintegrated. The fighter rolled right and tumbled away, trailing smoke. The high attacker broke off prematurely. The low attacker pressed his run and fired a 2-second burst. 20-millimeter cannon rounds punctured Hedgehog's right wing. 1 hydraulic line severed. The waist gunner reported fluid spraying across the window. Delaney called out damage assessment. Right landing gear hydraulic system compromised. They'd need to manually crank the gear down for landing, assuming they made it back. Morrison rechecked fuel levels. 72 minutes to Alconbury at current power settings. The formation stretched 8 miles ahead and widening. They were isolated over occupied France with German fighters circling. The radio crackled to life. Another YB-40 crew from the 305th Bomb Group, Captain Richard Hayes, piloting aircraft 425741. His gunship had also lost formation position. 2 YB-40s now separated from the main force, both struggling to sustain airspeed, both burning fuel faster than planned. Hayes proposed they join up. Combined defensive fire from 32 guns might deter the Germans. Hartwell concurred. Hayes descended from 21,000 feet to match Hedgehog's altitude at 19,500. The Focke-Wulfs circled wider, 4 visible, maybe 6. They weren't engaging 2 gunships flying loose formation, but they weren't departing either.
At 5:07, Hartwell crossed the French coast outbound. The channel stretched gray and featureless below, 53 miles to the English coast, 41 minutes flying time at their current ground speed. Number 3 engine ran hot. Morrison had reduced power twice already. They couldn't maintain altitude much longer. Hedgehog descended through 19,000, 18,800, 18,600. Hayes transmitted that his number 2 engine oil pressure was collapsing. He throttled back to prevent seizure. His YB-40 decelerated to 138 miles per hour, both aircraft struggling, both crews monitoring fuel gauges ticking toward empty, both praying the German fighters wouldn't pursue them over water. At 5:22, 2 Messerschmitt 109s appeared at 6 o'clock high. They'd followed the stragglers to the channel. The tail gunners called out the intercept, range 1,400 yards and closing. The fighters dove through 18,000 feet. Their cannons opened fire at 800 yards. Hartwell couldn't climb, couldn't accelerate, couldn't turn sharply enough to disrupt their aim. The YB-40 had become a flying target with empty sky in every direction. The tail gunner engaged first. Staff Sergeant Raymond Kazak, 24 years old, former skeet shooting champion from Cleveland. He'd never tracked targets moving at these velocities. The lead Messerschmitt 109 closed to 600 yards. Kazak walked his tracers across empty sky. The German pilot jinked left, right, dove 20 degrees. His wingman shadowed. Both fighters opened fire at 400 yards. Cannon shells tore through Hedgehog's tail section. One round detonated in the horizontal stabilizer. Another punched through the fuselage 2 feet behind Kazak's position. The aircraft shuddered. Hartwell felt the controls turn spongy. Morrison climbed back to assess damage. The elevator cables remained intact, but the trim tab mechanism was jammed. Hartwell would need to fight the control yoke all the way to England. The Messerschmitts climbed for another pass. Hayes's YB-40 opened fire with all dorsal guns. The combined firepower from both gunships saturated the sky with tracers. The German fighters broke left and circled back to altitude. At 5:31, 4 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts appeared from the northeast, long-range escort fighters returning from a sweep over Belgium. They'd intercepted the radio calls about stragglers under attack. The Thunderbolts dove at the Messerschmitts. The German pilots spotted them coming and turned east toward France. The P-47s didn't pursue. They formed up on both YB-40s and waggled their wings. Escort to the English coast. Hartwell checked fuel. 37 minutes remaining at current power settings. 29 miles to landfall. They'd make it, barely. But the concept was shattered. He could see it clearly now. The YB-40 functioned flawlessly as a gun platform. 16.50 calibers could obliterate any fighter that closed range. The chin turret alone had revolutionized the equation for frontal assaults. The weight rendered it worthless. After the standard B-17s released their bombs, they climbed faster and flew higher. The YB-40 still carried 11,000 rounds of ammunition, 4,000 extra pounds dragging them down, making them slower, transforming them from protectors into targets. Hayes transmitted at 5:47. His number 2 engine had seized. Oil pressure 0. He'd feathered the propeller. His YB-40 descended through 15,000 feet on 3 engines. Morrison calculated the numbers. Hayes wouldn't make Alconbury, possibly not even England. His fuel consumption on 3 engines was catastrophic. The English coast materialized at 5:53. Hayes aimed for the nearest airfield he could identify, RAF Manston on the Kent Peninsula. He contacted the tower and declared an emergency. They cleared him for immediate landing. Hartwell watched Hayes's YB-40 drop away toward the emergency field. One gunship limping home on 3 engines, another damaged and barely controllable. Both aircraft would require extensive repairs before flying again. At 6:18, Hedgehog touched down at Alconbury. Hartwell cranked the landing gear down manually, the right main gear locked with 15 seconds to spare before touchdown. Ground crews tallied 16 bullet holes in the fuselage, 1 severed hydraulic line, 1 jammed trim tab, 1 damaged horizontal stabilizer. Colonel Reed waited at the hard stand. He demanded Hartwell's assessment immediately. The inaugural combat test of the YB-40 concept, the flying destroyer engineered to protect bomber formations all the way to Germany and back. Hartwell shut down the engines and climbed out. His flight suit was drenched with sweat. His hands still trembled from wrestling the controls for 90 minutes. He looked at Reed and delivered 3 words that would terminate the program. It can't keep up. Reed authorized 7 additional missions. Perhaps the first test was an aberration. Perhaps alternative tactics would prove effective. Perhaps positioning the YB-40s differently within the formation would resolve the speed problem. The second mission launched June 15th against Le Mans. 4 YB-40s flew. All 4 fell behind after the bomb drop. The third mission on June 22nd targeted the IG Farben synthetic rubber facility at Hulls. 11 YB-40s dispatched. 1 aircraft lost to flak and fighters. The remaining 10 struggled home hours after the main formation landed. Engineers at Abbott's Ripton Depot attempted modifications. They adjusted waste gun feed mechanisms, altered ammunition loading procedures, repositioned weight forward to correct the center of gravity. Nothing worked. The fundamental problem persisted. A B-17F carrying bombs weighed 65,000 pounds at takeoff. After releasing bombs, it weighed 48,000. The YB-40 weighed 68,000 at takeoff. After combat, it still weighed 64,000. 4,000 pounds of guns and ammunition that couldn't be jettisoned. On June 28th, 6 YB-40s attacked Saint-Nazaire again. They claimed 1 German fighter destroyed. All 6 fell behind the formation on the return leg. 1 crew reported they'd been isolated over France for 43 minutes. Isolated meant vulnerable. The aircraft designed to protect bombers required protection itself. The 8th Air Force compiled statistics after 9 combat missions. 48 sorties flown, 5 confirmed German fighter kills, 2 probable, 1 YB-40 lost. Every single aircraft had fallen behind its formation after the bomb drop. Average separation distance, 7 miles. Average time alone over enemy territory, 38 minutes. Luftwaffe Fighter Chief Adolf Galland reviewed the intelligence reports. German pilots had decoded the YB-40s quickly. The heavily armed bombers looked distinctive, extra turret visible from any angle, no bomb bay doors. They flew in the most vulnerable positions. After the formation dropped bombs, the YB-40s became stragglers. German fighters concentrated attacks on stragglers. Galland's assessment was merciless. The YB-40 kills were negligible, not worth the risk. His pilots would rather attack the flying destroyers than avoid them, easy targets that couldn't escape. On July 29th, the final 2 YB-40s flew their last combat mission. Target, U-boat yards at Kiel. Both aircraft fell behind. Both required fighter escort to reach England. Both landed at emergency fields short of their home base. In August, General Karl Spaatz canceled the program. The 12 surviving YB-40s returned to the United States in November. Most became gunnery trainers. 4 were stripped and converted back to standard bombers. The concept died after 3 months of combat testing. The Army Air Forces had invested $469,000 per aircraft on the conversions. 12 aircraft, $5.6 million total for a weapon system that made bombers more vulnerable instead of safer. But one element of the YB-40 survived, one innovation that functioned flawlessly, the modification that would rescue thousands of bomber crews before the war concluded. Engineers at Wright Field studied the combat reports meticulously. They observed something crucial. Every YB-40 that engaged fighters from the front terminated the attack. The chin turret changed everything. 2.50 caliber guns firing forward with an unobstructed field of fire. No convergence issues, no blind spots at 12 o'clock high. That turret design went to Boeing immediately. The Bendix chin turret from the YB-40 program entered production in September 1943. Boeing designated it the Bendix Model A, 2.50 caliber Browning M, 2 machine guns, remote control operation from the bombardier position, 300 rounds per gun, electrically powered traverse and elevation. Douglas Aircraft installed the turret on the final 86 B-17 FDL aircraft. Rolling off the production line. These bombers deployed to England in October. Crews called it the answer to 12 o'clock high attacks.
Before the chin turret, German fighters attacked B-17 formations from dead ahead. The bombardier's position had 2 cheek guns mounted on the nose sides, limited traverse, limited field of fire. Pilots flew straight at the bombers and fired cannons through the gap in defensive coverage. Focke-Wulf 190S killed more B-17OS with frontal attacks than any other method. The chin turret eliminated the gap, complete forward coverage. The bombardier tracked attacking fighters through a simplified gun sight. Pressed the firing button. 250 caliber guns converged at 400 yards. German pilots who'd grown comfortable with head-on passes suddenly faced concentrated fire they couldn't evade. Combat reports from November demonstrated the transformation. The 91st Bomb Group flew B-17Fs with chin turrets on a mission to Gelsenkirchen. 12 frontal attacks, 10 broke off early. The other 2 pressed through and absorbed hits. 1 Focke-Wulf confirmed destroyed. 0 bombers lost to frontal attacks. Boeing incorporated the chin turret into the B-17G production model. First aircraft rolled off the line in December 1943. The G model became the definitive flying fortress. Boeing plants in Seattle and Wichita, Douglas in Long Beach and Tulsa, Vega in Burbank, all 3 manufacturers building B-17Gs with the standardized chin turret. Production accelerated rapidly, 50 aircraft per month in January 1944, 120 per month by March, 230 per month by June. The factories delivered 8,680 B-17Gs before production ended in April 1945. Every single aircraft carried the chin turret that originated in the failed YB-40 program. The 303rd Bomb Group transitioned to B-17Gs in February 1944. Their loss rate from frontal attacks plummeted from 12% to 3%. The 379th Bomb Group reported comparable numbers, 11% to 4%. The 384th tracked their data carefully. Before chin turrets, 43 bombers lost to frontal attacks in 6 months. After chin turrets, 14 lost in 12 months. 8th Air Force statisticians calculated the overall impact. The chin turret reduced bomber losses to frontal attacks by 71% across all groups, all missions, all theaters. By VE Day, the B-17G equipped 26 heavy bombardment groups in Europe, 4 groups in Italy, 2 in the Pacific, 32 groups total. Each group flew 48 aircraft on standard missions. That's 1,536 B-17Gs in combat simultaneously. The YB-40 program lasted 3 months, flew 48 combat sorties, claimed 5 German fighters, cost $5.6 million, failed completely as an escort concept. But the chin turret from those 12 failed gunships flew on 8,680 flying fortresses, protected crews on more than 290,000 combat sorties, saved an estimated 2,300 bomber crews who would have died to frontal attacks without it. The flying destroyer died. Its innovation lived. The chin turret wasn't the only YB-40 innovation that survived. Engineers studying the combat reports identified 2 other modifications that solved genuine problems: the staggered waist gun positions on standard B-17Fs. Both waist gunners stood directly across from each other. They competed for space, collided during attacks from beam angles, restricted each other's field of fire. Combat footage showed waist gunners physically blocking each other while tracking fast-moving targets. The YB-40 had repositioned the right waist gun forward by 30 inches. Staggered configuration. Each gunner had space to maneuver, space to swing their guns through full traverse. No more collisions during combat. Boeing incorporated staggered waist positions into the B-17G. Waist gunners reported 40% improved field of fire, fewer jams from rushed reloading, superior coordination during simultaneous attacks from both sides. The 94th Bomb Group documented their experience. Before staggered positions, average engagement time 12 seconds before gunners interfered with each other. After, 27 seconds of continuous tracking. The third improvement emerged from analyzing the YB-40 tail gunner position. Sergeant Katzak had reported restricted visibility from the standard tail position during his combat mission. Small windows, constrained view, difficult to track fighters approaching from 6 o'clock low. The Army Air Forces contracted with the Cheyenne Modification Center in Wyoming to redesign the tail position. Larger windows, enhanced visibility above and below, improved gun mounting, reinforced armor protection. They called it the Cheyenne tail. It became standard on late production B-17Gs. 3 innovations from a failed program: chin turret, staggered waist guns, Cheyenne tail. All 3 incorporated into the B-17G. All 3 saving lives on every mission for the remainder of the war. Captain James Hartwell flew 16 additional missions in standard B-17Fs. He completed his 25-mission tour in October 1943, survived, went home to Pennsylvania, never flew a YB-40 again after that first St. Nazaire mission. But in December, he returned to Alconbury as a training officer. The first B-17Gs were arriving. He watched crews circling the new bombers, pointing at the chin turret, asking how it functioned, where it originated. Hartwell told them about the YB-40, the flying destroyer that couldn't keep up, the gunship that became the target, the 3-month program that failed so catastrophically it got canceled before summer ended. Then he showed them the turret, explained how bombardiers operated it, demonstrated the field of fire, walked them through the ammunition loading procedure. The crews listened intently. They understood. The chin turret that would protect them originated from an aircraft that failed, an expensive mistake that cost $5.6 million, a weapon system that survived only 3 months of combat testing. One pilot asked Hartwell if the YB-40 was worth it. Worth the money, worth the effort, worth the crews who flew those 12 aircraft into combat knowing they'd fall behind. Hartwell looked at the B-17G on the hard stand, the chin turret gleaming in the weak English sunlight. He thought about frontal attacks, about Focke-Wulfs diving through formations at 12 o'clock high, about bombardiers who finally had a weapon that could stop them. He thought about the 8,680 bombers that would carry that turret before the war ended. Worth it, he said. Every mission, every dollar, every bullet hole in Hedgehog's fuselage. The YB-40 taught us how to fail forward. The final YB-40 mission flew on July 29, 1943. By August, the program was officially canceled. By November, all 12 surviving aircraft had returned to the United States. Most became trainers. A few were scrapped. One ended up in a scrapyard scene in the 1946 film The Best Years of Our Lives. No YB-40 survived the war intact. No museums preserved them. No restoration projects brought them back. The flying destroyer vanished from history, but the innovation lived everywhere. Every B-17G that flew over Europe, every bomber crew that survived a frontal attack, every pilot who reached 25 missions because a Focke-Wulf broke off early when chin turret tracers found their target. The 8th Air Force flew more than 290,000 combat sorties with B-17Gs. The chin turret fired in anger on approximately 114,000 of those missions. Conservative estimates suggest it directly prevented 2,300 bomber losses. That's 23,000 crew members who came home. The National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton displays a B-17G, tail number 44-83514, named Shoo 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 Baby, restored to flying condition. The chin turret gleams under the museum lights. A plaque mentions it was standard equipment on all G models. The plaque doesn't mention the YB-40, doesn't explain where the turret originated, doesn't tell the story of 12 aircraft that failed so completely their program lasted 3 months. History remembers successes, the B-17G that helped win the war, the flying fortress that became an icon, the bomber that could absorb tremendous damage and bring crews home. History forgets failures, the YB-40 that couldn't keep up, the $5.6 million mistake, the flying destroyer that required protection instead of providing it. But failures teach lessons successes never do. The YB-40 proved that good ideas poorly executed still contain good ideas, that expensive mistakes can generate priceless innovations, that 3 months of combat testing can produce improvements that last years. Boeing engineers didn't perceive the YB-40 as failure. They perceived it as research. They extracted what worked and corrected what didn't. The chin turret worked, the extra weight didn't. So they retained the turret and eliminated the weight. Simple, effective, life-saving. If this story resonated with you the way it resonated with us, do me a favor. Tap that like button. Every single like signals YouTube to share this story with more people. Hit subscribe and activate notifications. We're excavating forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about engineers and pilots and crews who transformed failures into victories. Real innovation, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community spans the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for ensuring the YB-40 crews don't disappear into silence. They failed spectacularly, but their failures saved thousands.